She was in the delivery room and in labor, but the billionaire doctor who is her ex saw something shocking in the ultrasound. "Sophia, whose baby is this?" The words hung in the sterile air of the delivery room like a death sentence. Dr. Alexander Thorne, billionaire medical mogul, stared at the ultrasound screen with trembling hands, his voice barely above a whisper. "What kind of question is that?" Sophia gasped between contractions, sweat beading on her forehead. "It's mine, obviously." "That's not what I mean." Alexander's voice cracked as he pointed to the screen. "Do you see that mark on the baby's shoulder? That heart-shaped birthmark?" Sophia's emerald eyes widened in terror. "I was going to tell you. I swear I was going to tell you." "Tell me what?" Alexander's hands shook as he held the ultrasound wand. "Sophia, is this baby mine?" The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the steady beep of monitors and Sophia's labored breathing. 2 years of separation, of bitter words and broken hearts, all crystallizing into this one impossible moment. "Yes," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "He's yours, Alex. He's your son." What happens when fate forces two broken hearts back together in the most vulnerable moment of their lives? When the billionaire who chose money over love discovers he's about to become a father to the child of the woman he destroyed? When the woman who disappeared with his baby realizes she can't hide the truth any longer? My beautiful family, welcome to Cedar Light Love Stories. I'm here to share with you a story that will challenge everything you believe about love, forgiveness, and second chances. If you've ever wondered whether some mistakes are too big to fix, whether some hearts are too broken to heal, then this story is for you. Before we dive deep into this emotional journey, I want you to hit that like button. If you believe in the power of love to transform even the most damaged souls, subscribe to Cedar Light Love Stories because we're building a family of believers right here. People who understand that the best stories aren't just entertainment, they're mirrors that show us who we can become. Now, let me take you back to where it all began, because this story, this beautiful, heartbreaking, impossible story, starts with the kind of love that burns so bright it can blind you to everything else that matters. 2 years earlier, Alexander Thorne stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, overlooking the city that had made him one of the youngest billionaires in America. At 32, he owned a chain of private medical facilities that catered to the wealthy elite, but his reputation as a surgeon remained unmatched. He could have lived off his investments alone, but medicine was his passion, his identity, his everything. That was until she walked into his life. Sophia Chen had been working as a freelance medical illustrator, hired to create detailed anatomical drawings for one of his hospital's educational programs. She was 24, brilliant, and possessed a quiet strength that drew him like a moth to flame. Her portfolio was impressive, but it was her eyes that captured him. Green as emeralds, filled with intelligence and a warmth that made him forget, for the first time in his life, about profit margins and expansion plans. "Mr. Thorne?" Her voice was soft but confident as she stood in his office doorway that first day. "I'm here about the illustration project." Alexander had interviewed dozens of medical illustrators, but none had made his pulse quicken just by walking into the room. Sophia wore a simple navy dress that emphasized her delicate frame, her dark hair pulled back in a professional bun. She carried a worn leather portfolio that spoke of someone who valued substance over style. "Please, call me Alexander. And you must be Sophia." He stood, extending his hand, and when their fingers touched, he felt something he'd never experienced before. An electric connection that seemed to rewire his entire nervous system. "Thank you for considering my work," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "I've reviewed the project specifications, and I believe I can bring exactly what you're looking for to life." As she opened her portfolio, Alexander found himself studying her hands. Graceful, artistic hands that moved with purpose and precision. Hands that could capture the intricate beauty of the human heart on paper with stunning accuracy. "These are remarkable," Alexander said, reviewing her previous work. "The detail, the emotional resonance. You don't just draw anatomy, you capture the soul of medicine." Sophia's cheeks flushed pink. "Medicine saved my life when I was younger. A heart defect that required multiple surgeries. I suppose my art is my way of honoring the people who gave me a second chance at life." That vulnerability, that gratitude for life itself, pierced through Alexander's carefully constructed walls. He'd spent years building his empire, accumulating wealth and prestige, but he'd never met someone who understood that medicine wasn't just about money. It was about hope. "The job is yours," he said, making a decision that would change everything. "But I have one condition." "What's that?" "Let me take you to dinner tonight. To discuss the project, of course." Sophia smiled, and Alexander felt his world shift on its axis. "I'd like that very much." That dinner lasted 4 hours. They talked about medicine, art, their dreams for the future. Alexander found himself sharing stories he'd never told anyone, about the pressure of building an empire, about the loneliness that came with success. Sophia listened without judgment, offered insights that revealed a wisdom beyond her years. "You know what I think?" she said as they shared dessert at the intimate French restaurant he'd chosen. "I think you've forgotten why you became a doctor in the first place." "What do you mean?" "When you talk about your hospitals, you mention revenue and efficiency. But when you talk about surgery, your whole face changes. You light up like a little boy talking about his favorite toy." Alexander paused, fork halfway to his mouth. "I never thought about it that way. Maybe success isn't about how much you accumulate. Maybe it's about how much you contribute, how many lives you touch, how much healing you bring to the world." That night, Alexander walked Sophia to her apartment in Brooklyn, a modest 2-bedroom she shared with her elderly grandmother. The contrast between his penthouse and her simple home should have highlighted the gap between their worlds. Instead, it made him realize how empty his world had become. "Thank you for tonight," Sophia said, as they stood outside her building. "I haven't talked like that with anyone in a long time." "Neither have I." Alexander reached out, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Sophia, I know this is unprofessional, but I'd like to see you again. Not for business. For me." She looked up at him, those emerald eyes searching his face. "Alexander, I need you to know something. I'm not interested in your money. I don't care about your penthouse or your cars or your private jets. If you want to see me, it has to be because you want to know me, not because you want to impress me." "I want to know you," he said without hesitation. "I want to know everything about you." Their first real date was nothing like Alexander's usual style. Instead of expensive restaurants and exclusive venues, they went to a street fair in Brooklyn. They ate funnel cake and played carnival games. Alexander won Sophia a stuffed elephant that was larger than her living room chair. They rode the Ferris wheel, and at the top, with the city spread out below them, Alexander kissed her for the first time. It was a kiss that tasted like possibility, like a future he'd never dared to imagine. "This is crazy," Sophia whispered against his lips. "We barely know each other." "I know enough," Alexander replied. "I know that you make me want to be a better man. I know that when I'm with you, I remember why I fell in love with medicine in the first place. I know that I've been waiting my whole life for someone to see me, really see me, the way you do." For 6 months, they lived in a bubble of perfect happiness. Alexander scaled back his work schedule for the first time in years. He spent weekends at Sophia's apartment, cooking dinner with her grandmother, learning about her childhood, her dreams, her fears. Sophia would visit him at the hospital, bringing lunch and watching him work with awe and admiration. "You're magic in there," she told him, after observing a complex cardiac surgery. "The way you move, the way you think 3 steps ahead. You don't just save lives, Alexander, you perform miracles." "Only because I have something to come home to now," he replied, pulling her close. "Someone who makes all of this matter." They made plans together, talked about marriage, about children, about combining their passions to create something beautiful. Alexander even started looking at rings, imagining the moment he would propose, picturing Sophia in a wedding dress, walking down the aisle toward their future. But empires require maintenance, and success demands sacrifice. The first crack appeared when Alexander's business partner Marcus approached him with an opportunity that could double their medical network in 18 months. It would require Alexander's full attention, extensive travel, and the kind of focused dedication that had built his fortune in the first place. "This is what we've been working toward," Marcus argued during a late-night meeting in Alexander's office. "Think about it, 24 facilities across 3 states. We'd be the largest private medical network on the East Coast." "I don't know, Marcus. My priorities have shifted lately." "Because of the girl?" Marcus's tone was dismissive. "Alexander, you're 32 years old and worth $300 million. You can have any woman you want. Don't let one relationship derail everything we've built." That night, Alexander went home to Sophia's apartment, his mind churning with possibilities and doubts. He found her in her makeshift studio, working on the illustrations for his hospital. She looked up when he entered, paint smudged on her cheek, eyes bright with creativity. "How was your meeting?" she asked, setting down her brush. Complicated. Alexander sat on the edge of her desk, watching her work. Marcus wants to expand the business. Aggressively. That's wonderful. You've worked so hard for this. It would mean a lot of travel, long hours, less time together. Sophia studied his face carefully. What do you want to do? I want both, Alexander admitted. I want the expansion, and I want you. I want to build something incredible, but I want to share it with you. Then we'll make it work, Sophia said simply. I believe in you, Alexander. I believe in what you're building. If this is your dream, then I'll support you. Her unwavering faith should have made the decision easier. Instead, it made everything more complicated, because Alexander realized that Sophia's love came without conditions, without demands, without the kind of strategic calculations that governed his business world. She loved him completely, trusting that he would protect what they had built together. It was a trust he would spectacularly fail to honor. The expansion began 3 months later, and with it, Alexander's slow, but steady transformation back into the man he'd been before Sophia. 18-hour workdays became the norm. Business dinners and networking events filled his evenings. Weekend trips to scout new locations replaced lazy Sunday mornings in Sophia's bed. At first, Sophia was understanding. She brought dinner to his office when he worked late. She accompanied him to business functions, charming his associates with her intelligence and grace. She never complained when he had to cancel dates or cut their time short for emergency calls. But understanding has its limits, and love requires presence to survive. You missed dinner again? Sophia said one evening when Alexander finally arrived at her apartment at nearly midnight. She was sitting on her couch in pajamas, a plate of cold food on the coffee table. I'm sorry. The meeting ran longer than expected. Alexander loosened his tie, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. Jakarta is more complicated than we anticipated. Jakarta? Sophia looked confused. I thought this was about the Philadelphia expansion. That was last month. We're looking at international opportunities now. Sophia was quiet for a moment, processing this information. How many cities are we talking about? Potentially 15 to 20. Why? Because I'm trying to understand how long this phase will last. How long before you come back to me? Alexander sat beside her on the couch, taking her hands in his. Sophia, this is temporary. Once we get the systems in place, once we establish the network, things will calm down. When? Her voice was small, vulnerable. Give me a timeline, Alexander. Help me understand when I'll have my boyfriend back. The question hung in the air like a challenge Alexander couldn't meet. Because the truth was, he didn't know. The expansion was more intoxicating than he'd anticipated. Each new deal, each new facility, each new opportunity fed a hunger he'd forgotten he possessed. I can't give you an exact date, he said finally, but I promise you, once this is established, we'll have everything we dreamed of. Financial security, multiple homes, the ability to travel anywhere we want. I don't want multiple homes, Sophia said quietly. I want one home with you in it. I want a boyfriend who remembers our anniversary. I want someone who chooses me sometimes, not just when it's convenient for business. That's not fair, Sophia. I'm building our future. No, she said, pulling her hands away. You're building your empire. I'm just supposed to wait in the corner until you have time for me. That fight lasted until dawn. They said things that night that couldn't be unsaid, revealed resentments that had been festering beneath the surface. Alexander accused Sophia of not understanding the pressure he was under. Sophia accused Alexander of using their relationship as a convenience, rather than a priority. They made up as couples do, but something had shifted. Trust had been damaged, and neither of them knew how to repair it. Over the next 3 months, the pattern repeated itself with increasing frequency. Alexander would promise to do better, to make more time, to prioritize their relationship. Then Marcus would call with another opportunity, another crisis, another chance to expand their reach, and Alexander would choose business over love. Sophia stopped bringing dinner to his office, stopped attending business functions, stopped pretending that everything was fine. She threw herself into her own work, taking on additional projects, building her own client base, creating a life that didn't revolve around waiting for Alexander to remember she existed. The end came on a cold December evening. Alexander was supposed to meet Sophia for their anniversary dinner. She had made reservations at the restaurant where they'd had their first date, bought a new dress, spent the afternoon making herself beautiful for a night she hoped would reconnect them. Alexander never showed up. He was in Chicago, closing a deal that Marcus insisted couldn't wait. He meant to call Sophia, meant to explain, meant to reschedule. But the negotiations went late, the celebration went later, and by the time he remembered his phone, it was past midnight. 12 missed calls. 6 voicemails. 3 text messages that grew progressively shorter and more distant. The last one simply said, "Don't come over tonight, we need to talk tomorrow." Alexander knew, even before he flew back to New York, that he had destroyed something precious. The flight gave him 6 hours to rehearse apologies, to plan grand gestures, to figure out how to salvage the best thing that had ever happened to him. But when he knocked on Sophia's door the next evening, he could see in her eyes that it was already too late. "Come in," she said quietly, stepping aside to let him enter. The apartment felt different somehow. Colder, more distant. "Sophia, I can explain about last night. Can you?" She turned to face him, and Alexander was shocked by how tired she looked. How defeated. "Can you explain why our anniversary meant less to you than a business deal? Can you explain why I've been eating dinner alone for 3 months? Can you explain why I feel like a stranger in my own relationship? It's not that simple. The Chicago deal, it came together at the last minute. If we hadn't closed it yesterday, we would have lost 6 months of work. There's always going to be another deal, Alexander. Always another opportunity. Always another reason why I have to wait." Alexander moved toward her, desperate to bridge the growing distance between them. "Sophia, I love you. You have to know that." "I know you think you do," she said sadly. "But love isn't just a feeling, Alexander, it's a choice. And you keep choosing everything else." "That's not true, isn't it?" Sophia walked to her dining table, where a single-place setting sat with cold, untouched food. "I sat here for 3 hours last night. I called your office, I called your phone. I even called Marcus to make sure you weren't in an accident. Do you know what he told me?" Alexander's stomach dropped. "What did he say?" "He said you'd probably forgotten because you were so focused on the deal." He laughed, Alexander, laughed and said I should get used to it because empire building is a full-time job. "Marcus doesn't understand our relationship." "Neither do you," Sophia whispered. "Because if you did, you never would have left me sitting alone on our anniversary." The fight that followed was brutal in its honesty. Sophia laid out months of accumulated pain, of feeling invisible, of being treated like an accessory to Alexander's success, rather than a partner in his life. Alexander defended his choices, argued that everything he was doing was for their future, insisted that she didn't understand the pressure he was under. "I'm building an empire, Sophia. I'm creating something that will last, something that will provide for us for generations." "I don't want an empire," she shot back. "I want a relationship. I want a partner who shows up. I want someone who doesn't treat love like a business transaction that can be postponed until it's convenient." "You're being dramatic." The moment those words left Alexander's mouth, he knew he'd made a fatal mistake. Sophia's face went completely still, and when she spoke, her voice was deadly quiet. "Dramatic? I'm being dramatic for wanting my boyfriend to remember our anniversary? I'm being dramatic for expecting you to call when you're going to be 5 hours late? I'm being dramatic for wanting to matter more than your profit margins? That's not what I meant." "Yes, it is." Sophia walked to her closet and pulled out a suitcase. "It's exactly what you meant. My feelings, my needs, my pain, it's all just drama to you. An inconvenience that gets in the way of your real priorities. What are you doing?" Alexander watched in growing panic as Sophia began packing her clothes. "I'm leaving." "You can't leave. This is your apartment." "No," Sophia said without looking at him. "I'm leaving you. I'm done being the woman who waits in the corner while you build your empire. I'm done being invisible in my own relationship." Alexander felt the world tilting beneath his feet. "Sophia, please. Let's talk about this. Let's work it out. We've been talking for months, Alexander. I've been telling you how I feel, what I need, what's wrong. You nod and promise to do better. Then Marcus calls and you forget I exist. It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple." Sophia zipped the suitcase closed and turned to face him. "You have to choose, Alexander. Me or the empire. You can't have both. That's not fair. You can't make me choose between my career and our relationship. I'm not making you choose your career, I'm making you choose your priorities. There's a difference." Sophia picked up her suitcase. "But honestly, you already made your choice. You made it when you missed our anniversary. You made it when you stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as an obligation. Where are you going? That's not your concern anymore." Sophia walked toward the door, then paused. "You know what the saddest part is? I would have supported your dreams. I would have been your partner through all of this, but you never asked me to be your partner. You just expected me to be your audience. Sophia, please don't go. I love you." She turned back one last time, tears streaming down her face. "If you loved me, you would have been here last night. If you loved me, you would fight for us instead of fighting with me. If you loved me, you wouldn't let me walk out this door." And then she was gone, leaving Alexander standing alone in her apartment, surrounded by the ghosts of what they'd built together. He waited for her to come back. Waited for her to call. Waited for her to give him another chance to explain, to apologize, to make things right. But Sophia had disappeared as completely as if she'd never existed. Her phone was disconnected. Her apartment sat empty. Even her grandmother claimed not to know where she'd gone. For 3 weeks, Alexander looked for her, hired investigators, called mutual friends, checked hospitals and hotels. But Sophia had vanished, taking with her the only happiness he'd ever known. Marcus found him in his office one night, drunk and staring at photos of Sophia on his phone. "You need to let this go," Marcus said, settling into the chair across from Alexander's desk. "Women like her, they're not built for our world. They want fairy tales and happily ever afters. They don't understand what it takes to build something real." "She was real," Alexander slurred. "The only real thing I've ever had. She was a distraction. A beautiful distraction, but a distraction nonetheless." Marcus leaned forward. "Alexander, you're one of the most successful men in the country. You can have any woman you want. Don't destroy everything we've built for someone who couldn't handle your success. Maybe she was right. Maybe I chose wrong. You chose correctly. You chose the future. You chose security. You chose to build something that will outlast any relationship. But success tastes like ash when you have no one to share it with." Alexander threw himself into work with renewed intensity, expanding his empire with ruthless efficiency. Within 18 months, he doubled his worth and tripled his medical network. He dated occasionally beautiful women who understood the demands of his lifestyle, who never asked for more than he was willing to give. None of them was Sophia. None of them made him laugh until his stomach hurt. None of them challenged his thinking or made him want to be better. None of them looked at him with the kind of love that made him believe he could conquer the world. Now, 2 years later, Alexander Thorne stood in a delivery room staring at the ultrasound image of his son, finally understanding what he had lost and what he was about to gain. The baby's heart rate was dropping. Sophia was hemorrhaging. And Alexander had to somehow save both of them, while his own heart shattered and reformed with each passing second. "We need to move now," he announced to the room, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. "Prep for emergency C-section." "No," Sophia gasped, gripping his arm with surprising strength. "Please, Alex, I want to do this naturally. I need to bring him into the world myself." Alexander looked down at her. This woman who had haunted his dreams for 2 years, who was now trusting him with the lives of both her and their child. Her face was pale with exhaustion and pain, but her eyes held the same fierce determination that had made him fall in love with her. "Sophia, you're hemorrhaging. The baby's in distress. If we don't deliver now." "One more try," she pleaded. "Give me one more chance. I can do this." Alexander hesitated, torn between medical protocol and the desperate hope in Sophia's eyes. Every instinct as a doctor told him to proceed with surgery immediately. But every instinct as the man who loved her, who had failed her before, told him to trust her strength. "One more try," he agreed. "But if anything changes, we go to surgery immediately. What happened next will stay with me forever, and I know it will stay with you too. Because sometimes the most profound moments of our lives happen when everything is falling apart, when we're forced to choose between safety and faith, between protocol and love. Can a love that was destroyed by pride and ambition be reborn in a moment of crisis? Can two people who hurt each other so deeply find their way back to trust? And what happens when the stakes aren't just their hearts, but the life of their child? I need you to comment below and tell me, have you ever had to choose between your dreams and the person you love? Have you ever realized that everything you thought you wanted meant nothing without someone to share it with? Your stories matter to me, and they matter to this community we're building together. The next hour would test everything Alexander thought he knew about love, about redemption, and about the kind of man he wanted to be. But first, let me tell you about the miracle that was about to unfold because some stories are so powerful they change everyone who witnesses them. For the next hour, Alexander guided Sophia through the most challenging delivery of his career. Not because of the medical complexities, though there were plenty, but because every contraction, every push, every moment of pain brought them closer to meeting their son, while forcing them to confront the wreckage of their past. "I can see his head," Alexander announced, his voice thick with emotion. "Sophia, he's almost here." "I can't," she gasped, her strength failing after 14 hours of labor. "I can't do it anymore, Alex." "Yes, you can." Without thinking, Alexander reached out and took her hand, forgetting every professional boundary he'd ever learned. "You're the strongest woman I know. You carried our son for 9 months alone. You survived my stupidity and built a life without me. You can do anything." "Our son," Sophia repeated through her tears. "I still can't believe you're here. I still can't believe this is happening." "I'm here," Alexander said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere this time. I promise you, Sophia. I'm not going anywhere." The nurse monitoring the baby's vitals called out urgently, heart rate dropping again. "We need this baby out now." Alexander felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came with medical emergencies. But this time it was different. This wasn't just any patient. This was his child, his son, fighting for his first breath. "Sophia, I need you to give me everything you have," Alexander said, his eyes locked on hers. "One more push, the biggest push of your life. Bring our son home." With a cry that seemed to come from the depths of her soul, Sophia pushed, and suddenly, Alexander was holding his child. A perfect, tiny, screaming baby boy with dark hair, and the unmistakable Thorne family birthmark on his shoulder. "Oh my God," Alexander whispered, staring down at the baby in wonder. "Sophia, he's perfect. Is he okay?" Sophia asked weakly, trying to sit up to see. "He's perfect," Alexander repeated, his voice breaking as he cleaned the baby and checked his vitals. 10 fingers, 10 toes, healthy lungs that are working overtime. He looked up at Sophia with tears streaming down his face. "He's absolutely perfect." Alexander carefully placed the baby on Sophia's chest, and the moment their son felt his mother's heartbeat, he calmed. The crying stopped, replaced by tiny hiccuping breaths, as he settled against the woman who had carried him for 9 months. "Hello, baby," Sophia whispered, her voice filled with awe. "I'm your mama. I've been waiting so long to meet you." Alexander watched them together, mother and child, his family, and felt something shift deep in his chest. A piece of himself that had been missing for 2 years suddenly clicked back into place. This was what mattered. This was what he had thrown away in pursuit of an empire that meant nothing without people to love. "What are you going to name him?" Alexander asked softly, unable to look away from the perfect picture they made. Sophia looked up at him, her face glowing despite her exhaustion. "I was thinking Gabriel. Gabriel Thorne, if that's okay with you." "Gabriel Thorne," Alexander repeated, testing the name on his tongue. "It's perfect. He's perfect. You're perfect." As the medical team finished ensuring both mother and baby were stable, Alexander found himself overwhelmed by emotions he hadn't felt in years. Joy, wonder, fierce protectiveness, and underneath it all, a love so profound it threatened to bring him to his knees. "Alex," Sophia said quietly once they were alone. "We need to talk." "I know." Alexander pulled a chair close to her bed, careful not to disturb Gabriel, who was sleeping peacefully on his mother's chest. "Sophia, I have so many things I need to say to you." "Let me go first," she interrupted. "Please. I've been rehearsing this conversation for 2 years. Alexander nodded, bracing himself for the pain he knew was coming. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the pregnancy," Sophia began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I found out 2 weeks after I left. I was scared and hurt and angry, and I convinced myself that you wouldn't want us anyway. Sophia, I would have wanted you both more than anything in the world. Would you?" She looked at him with eyes that held 2 years of doubt. "Because the man I left that night, the man who called me dramatic for wanting my boyfriend to show up for our anniversary, that man would have seen a baby as another obligation, another thing competing for his time and attention." The words hit Alexander like physical blows, but he couldn't argue with them. Because she was right. The man he'd been 2 years ago would have seen a child as a complication, not a gift. "You're right," he said quietly. "That man would have failed you both. That man was so consumed with building an empire that he couldn't see the kingdom he already had." What changed? Sophia asked. What made you different? Alexander was quiet for a long moment, gathering his thoughts. Losing you changed me, not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly. Day by day, success after success, I kept waiting to feel fulfilled, kept waiting for the moment when all my achievements would add up to happiness. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. I doubled my worth in the 18 months after you left, tripled the size of my medical network. I was featured on magazine covers, invited to speak at conferences, courted by investors who wanted to be part of my success story. And how did it feel? Sophia asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Empty, Alexander admitted. Completely, utterly empty. I had everything I thought I wanted, and it meant nothing. Literally nothing. I would sit in board meetings discussing million-dollar deals and find myself thinking about you, wondering where you were, whether you were happy, whether you ever thought about me. Alexander turned back to face her. I started seeing a therapist about 6 months ago. Dr. Elizabeth Warren. She helped me understand that I was using work as a drug, using success as a way to avoid dealing with the fact that I had destroyed the only relationship that ever mattered to me. What did you learn? Sophia's voice was soft, curious rather than challenging. That love isn't something you fit into your schedule when it's convenient. Love is the schedule. Everything else, every goal, every achievement, every dream, it all has to serve love, not the other way around. Gabriel stirred in his sleep, making tiny baby sounds that made both parents smile despite the heavy conversation they were having. I scaled back my involvement in the day-to-day operations, Alexander continued, hired a full management team, delegated most of the expansion decisions. I wanted to create space in my life for what really mattered, even if I never got the chance to share it with you. Why didn't you try to find me? Sophia asked. After you realized all this, why didn't you look for me? Alexander sat back down, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. Because I thought I'd lost the right. I thought you deserved better than a man who had to lose everything to learn how to love properly. I thought you deserved someone who would choose you first, not someone who had to learn the hard way that nothing else matters. And now? Sophia's green eyes searched his face. What do you think now? Now I think I'm the luckiest man alive, Alexander said without hesitation. Not because of my money or my success, but because fate gave me another chance. Because somehow, impossibly, our son brought us back together. Because you're looking at me like maybe, just maybe, the man I've become might be worth knowing. Sophia was quiet for a long time, studying his face, processing everything he'd said. Gabriel slept peacefully between them, a tiny bridge connecting two broken hearts. I want to believe you, she said finally. I want to believe that you've changed, that you understand now what love requires. But Alex, you destroyed me. When you chose that deal over our anniversary, when you called my feelings dramatic, when you let me walk away without fighting for us, you broke something in me that I'm still trying to heal. I know, Alexander said, his voice heavy with regret. I know I hurt you in ways that sorry will never fix. I know I chose wrong at every crucial moment. I know I failed you when you needed me most. He leaned forward, his eyes never leaving hers. But Sophia, I also know that I love you. I've loved you every single day for the past 2 years. I've loved you through the success and the emptiness, and the therapy, and the slow, painful process of becoming a man worthy of your love. Love isn't enough, Sophia said quietly. Love without change is just words. Love without presence is just a feeling. Love without sacrifice is just selfishness wearing a prettier mask. You're absolutely right, Alexander agreed. Which is why I'm not asking you to take me back based on words. I'm asking you to let me show you, day by day, choice by choice, let me prove that I understand what love requires now. If you've ever been in Sophia's position, if you've ever had someone who hurt you deeply, ask for another chance, then you know the war that was raging in her heart right now. The part of her that remembered their love was urging her to take the leap, to believe in the possibility of redemption, but the part of her that remembered the pain was screaming warnings, reminding her that trust, once broken, is the most fragile thing in the world. And if you've ever been in Alexander's position, if you've ever realized too late that you destroyed something precious, then you know the desperate hope and terror he was feeling. The knowledge that this moment, this conversation would determine whether he got a second chance or spent the rest of his life wondering what might have been. I want you to pause right now and think about the relationships in your own life. Think about the times you've chosen work over love, success over presence, ambition over connection. We all have moments we wish we could redo, words we wish we could take back, choices we wish we could make differently. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's struggling to balance their dreams with their relationships. Someone who's forgotten that true success isn't measured in dollars, but in the depth of our connections with the people we love. Gabriel opened his eyes for the first time, looking up at his parents with the unfocused gaze of a newborn. In that moment, both Alexander and Sophia felt the weight of responsibility, the magnitude of the life they had created together. "He's going to need both of us," Sophia said softly, touching Gabriel's tiny hand. "Does that mean you're willing to try?" Alexander asked, hardly daring to hope. "I'm willing to try co-parenting," Sophia clarified. "I'm willing to let you be part of his life, to learn how to work together for his sake. But Alex, I need you to understand something. I'm not the same woman who left your office 2 years ago. I'm stronger now, but I'm also more careful with my heart. I won't let you hurt me again. I won't," Alexander promised. "Sophia, I swear to you, I will never put anything before you and Gabriel again." "That's a big promise," Sophia said, her voice cautious. "It's the only promise that matters." Over the next few days, as Sophia recovered in the hospital and Gabriel grew stronger, Alexander experienced something he'd never felt before: the overwhelming joy of being present for the small moments. Changing diapers at 3 in the morning, watching Gabriel's tiny fingers wrap around his own, seeing Sophia's face light up when their son opened his eyes. He took leave from the hospital, something he'd never done in his entire career. He arranged for other doctors to cover his cases, delegated his administrative responsibilities, and focused entirely on being exactly where he was needed most. "You don't have to stay," Sophia told him on their second day in the hospital. "I know you must have important surgeries scheduled." "There's nothing more important than this," Alexander replied, settling into the chair beside her bed. "Nothing in the world is more important than being here with you and Gabriel." "What about your empire?" There was a hint of challenge in her voice, testing whether his words matched his actions. "What about it?" "Marcus can handle the administrative side. I have excellent surgeons who can cover emergencies. And honestly, Sophia, I don't care if the whole thing collapses. I'd rather be broke and present for my son's first weeks of life than rich and absent." Sophia studied his face, looking for signs of the old Alexander, the man who had valued achievement over everything else. But all she saw was a father completely enchanted by his child, a man who seemed genuinely transformed by the experience of love. "Tell me about the last 2 years," she said. "What was your life like after I left?" Alexander settled back in his chair, Gabriel sleeping peacefully in his arms. "Lonely, successful, but lonely. I threw myself into work even more aggressively than before, told myself I was proving that I didn't need anyone, that I was better off focusing entirely on building my career." "Did you date anyone?" The question hung in the air between them. Alexander had known it would come eventually, but it still felt like stepping into a minefield. "Yes," he answered honestly. "A few women, nothing serious, nothing that lasted more than a few months." "What happened? Why didn't any of them work out?" Alexander looked down at Gabriel, then back at Sophia. "Because none of them were you. Because no matter how beautiful or successful or compatible they seemed on paper, they didn't make me want to be better. They didn't challenge me or inspire me or make me feel like I could conquer the world with their love." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I tried to convince myself that I could be happy with someone who fit more easily into my lifestyle, someone who wouldn't demand as much emotional investment. But every relationship felt hollow, like I was going through the motions of having a life, rather than actually living one." "I dated someone too," Sophia admitted quietly. "Jerome. We were together for about 8 months. Alexander felt a stab of jealousy so sharp it nearly made him gasp, but he forced himself to remain calm. "What happened with him?" "When I told him I was pregnant, he panicked. Turns out he wasn't ready for the responsibility of being a father. He was kind and present when it was easy, but the moment things got complicated, he disappeared." "I'm sorry," Alexander said, and meant it. "You deserved better than that." "I thought he was different from you," Sophia continued. "I thought he was the kind of man who would choose family over everything else, but when push came to shove, he ran just like you did." "I didn't run," Alexander said quietly. "I was too arrogant and too stupid to run. I just stood there and let you walk away because I thought my empire was more important than my heart." "Same result, different method." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Gabriel sleep, both lost in their own thoughts about the roads that had led them back to each other. "Alex," Sophia said eventually, "if we're going to try to be co-parents, I need to know that you understand what that means. It means showing up for school plays and soccer games and parent-teacher conferences. It means being present for the boring, everyday moments, not just the milestone celebrations. I understand. It means changing your schedule around his needs, not the other way around. It means sometimes choosing a bedtime story over a business dinner." "I understand," Alexander repeated. "Sophia, I know you have no reason to trust me, but I need you to know that everything is different now. Gabriel isn't an obligation, or a responsibility, or something I have to fit into my existing life. He is my life. You both are." Dr. Martinez, the pediatrician who had been monitoring Gabriel, knocked on the doorframe. "How are we doing in here?" "Getting to know each other," Sophia replied, smiling at the older doctor who had been incredibly kind throughout their stay. "Well, I have good news. Gabriel is thriving. His weight is good, his reflexes are excellent, and all his tests have come back perfect. You should be able to take him home tomorrow." "Home," Sophia repeated, and Alexander heard the uncertainty in her voice. After Dr. Martinez left, Alexander addressed the elephant in the room. "Where is home, Sophia? Where have you been living?" "I have a small apartment in Queens. 1 bedroom, but it's clean and safe and affordable." "What about money? How have you been supporting yourself?" Sophia's cheeks flushed slightly. "I've been working freelance, taking on as many projects as I could handle while pregnant. I qualified for some assistance programs. My neighbor Mrs. Chen, she's been incredibly helpful, almost like a grandmother figure." Alexander felt another stab of guilt, knowing that while Sophia had been struggling to make ends meet, as a single pregnant woman, he'd been accumulating more wealth than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. "I want to help," he said carefully. "Financially, I mean. Child support, medical expenses, whatever you need. I don't want your charity, Alex. It's not charity. He's my son, our son. It's my responsibility to provide for him." Sophia was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay. But we do this formally, through lawyers. I want everything legal and documented. I won't have you holding financial support over my head as leverage. Of course. Whatever makes you comfortable." That evening, as visiting hours ended, and Alexander prepared to leave the hospital. For the first time since Gabriel's birth, Sophia called out to him. "Alex?" "Yes?" "Thank you. For being here, for delivering him safely, for staying. I know this isn't how either of us imagined our lives would go, but I'm grateful that Gabriel will know his father." Alexander felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Thank you for giving me the chance. I know I don't deserve it, but I promise you I won't waste it." The next morning, Alexander arrived at the hospital early with a car seat he'd spent 3 hours researching and installing properly. He also brought a bag of carefully selected items, soft blankets, newborn clothes, in various sizes, everything Gabriel might need for his first trip home. "You didn't have to do all this," Sophia said, but Alexander could see the gratitude in her eyes. "I wanted to. I missed your entire pregnancy, Sophia. I missed every doctor's appointment, every ultrasound, every milestone. Let me be here for this." The drive to Sophia's apartment in Queens was surreal. 3 days ago, Alexander had been a successful but lonely billionaire with no idea he was about to become a father. Now he was sitting in the back seat of his car, watching his son sleep in his car seat, heading to meet the woman who had been raising his child alone. Sophia's apartment was small but warm, filled with books and art supplies, and the kinds of personal touches that made a space feel like home. Alexander could see evidence of her pregnancy everywhere, maternity clothes folded in a basket, baby supplies arranged on the kitchen counter, a crib set up in the corner of the bedroom. "It's not much," Sophia said, seeming suddenly self-conscious about the modest space. "It's perfect," Alexander said honestly. "It feels like home, something my penthouse never did." Over the next few hours, Alexander experienced the reality of newborn care for the first time. The constant feeding schedule, the diaper changes, the way Gabriel could go from peacefully sleeping to screaming in seconds flat. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, he felt useful, needed, present in a way he'd never been before. "You're good at this," Sophia observed as Alexander successfully calmed Gabriel after a particularly intense crying fit. "I'm learning. He's a good teacher." "Alex, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Are you happy?" Right now, in this moment, sitting in my tiny apartment changing diapers at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. Are you happy?" Alexander paused, considering the question seriously. 3 days ago he would have been in surgery or in meetings, making decisions that affected thousands of people and millions of dollars. His calendar would have been booked solid for weeks in advance. He would have been important, indispensable, successful by every conventional measure. Now he was sitting on the floor of a one-bedroom apartment in Queens, wearing jeans and a t-shirt instead of a suit, watching his ex-girlfriend nurse their son while they figured out how to be parents together. "I've never been happier in my entire life," he said, and meant every word. Something shifted in Sophia's expression at his answer. A wall came down, just slightly, just enough for Alexander to see a glimpse of the woman who had once loved him completely. "I have a confession," she said softly. "When I was in labor, when I saw you walk into that delivery room, part of me was relieved, terrified, but relieved. Because despite everything that happened between us, I knew you would save us. I knew Gabriel would be safe with you." "He will always be safe with me," Alexander promised. "Both of you will." "That's a big promise. It's the only one that matters." As the weeks passed, Alexander established a routine that would have been unimaginable to the man he'd been 2 years earlier. He spent mornings at the hospital, handling only the most critical cases and training other surgeons to take on more responsibility. His afternoons and evenings belonged to Gabriel and Sophia. He helped with night feedings, changed diapers, walked the floors at 3 in the morning when Gabriel was fussy. He grocery shopped and cooked dinner and did laundry. He read parenting books and baby-proofed the apartment and assembled furniture. "You know you don't have to do all this," Sophia told him one evening as he folded tiny onesies. "We managed fine before you got here." "I know you did. You're incredible, Sophia, but just because you can do it alone doesn't mean you should have to." It was the small moments that began to heal the wounds between them. Alexander reading bedtime stories with Gabriel on his chest, Sophia laughing at Alexander's attempts to master the art of swaddling. The way they naturally fell into a rhythm of shared responsibility and mutual support. 3 months after Gabriel's birth, Alexander made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. "I'm selling the penthouse," he announced during one of their evening conversations. "Why?" Sophia looked up from the baby clothes she was folding. "Because it never felt like home. It was just an expensive place to sleep between surgeries. I want something different now. Something real." "What kind of something?" Alexander hesitated, then decided to be completely honest. "I was hoping maybe we could look together. Find a place that works for all 3 of us. Separate bedrooms," he added quickly, seeing the wariness in her eyes. "No pressure, no expectations. Just a home where Gabriel can grow up with both his parents under the same roof." Sophia was quiet for a long time, and Alexander held his breath, waiting for her answer. "Can I think about it?" she said finally. "Of course. Take all the time you need." 2 weeks later, they found a house in Brooklyn. Nothing like Alexander's penthouse, but everything a family needed. 3 bedrooms, a yard for Gabriel to play in someday, a kitchen big enough for family dinners, a living room where they could all be together. "It's perfect," Sophia said as they walked through the empty rooms, Gabriel sleeping in his carrier. "It could be," Alexander agreed, "if you're willing to take the chance." That night, after Gabriel was asleep, and they were sharing tea in what would become their living room, Sophia asked the question Alexander had been waiting for. "What happens between us, Alex? Are we co-parents living together for Gabriel's sake, or are we trying to rebuild what we had?" Alexander set down his tea and turned to face her fully. "I can't speak for you, but I know what I want. I want the chance to love you the way I should have 2 years ago. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I want to build a life with you and Gabriel, a real life where love comes first and everything else serves that love. And if it doesn't work, if we try and fail again, then at least we'll fail together. At least Gabriel will grow up seeing his parents try to love each other, even if we can't make it work." Sophia reached across the space between them and took his hand. "I'm scared, Alex. I'm scared of trusting you again. I'm scared of believing that you've really changed. I'm scared of letting myself love you again only to have you choose your empire over us." "I'm scared too," Alexander admitted. "I'm scared of messing this up again. I'm scared that I'm still too selfish, too damaged, too set in my ways to be the partner you deserve. But I'm more scared of not trying. I'm more scared of living the rest of my life wondering what we could have been." "Okay," Sophia whispered. Okay, let's try." Let's move into our house and see if we can build something beautiful together." 6 months later, Alexander Thorne was a different man entirely. He woke up at 6 every morning, not to review patient charts or prepare for surgery, but to make breakfast for his family. He scheduled his surgeries around Gabriel's nap time and daycare pickup. He turned down speaking engagements and board positions and expansion opportunities that would take him away from home. And for the first time in his adult life, he was genuinely, deeply, completely happy. "I have something for you," Sophia said one evening as they sat on their back porch, watching Gabriel play in his bouncy seat. She handed him a small, wrapped box. Inside was a keychain with a photo of the three of them and an engraved message. "To the man who learned that love is the only empire worth building." "Do you mean that?" Alexander asked, his voice thick with emotion. "I mean that you're the best father Gabriel could ask for. I mean that you show up every day in every way that matters. I mean that you've proven that people can change, that love can heal, that second chances are real. And us? What about us?" Sophia smiled, the same radiant smile that had captured his heart 3 years earlier. "I love you, Alexander Thorne. I love the man you've become. I love the father you are. I love the way you choose us every single day." "Marry me," Alexander said suddenly. "What? Marry me?" "Not because it's expected, not because of Gabriel, but because I want to spend the rest of my life choosing you. I want to promise you, in front of everyone who matters to us, that you will always come first." "Always?" Sophia looked at him for a long moment, then at Gabriel, then back at him. "Ask me again in a year. Ask me when we've been through a few more challenges together, when we've proven that this isn't just the honeymoon phase of rediscovered love. I'll ask you every day for a year if that's what it takes." "That won't be necessary," Sophia laughed. "But I want us to be sure. I want Gabriel to grow up seeing a relationship built on trust and partnership and daily choice, not just romantic feelings." "I can wait," Alexander said. "I waited 2 years to find you again. I can wait another year to marry you." 1 year later, on the anniversary of Gabriel's birth, Alexander Thorne asked Sophia Chen to marry him again. This time surrounded by their family and friends, with their son taking his first wobbly steps across the yard, she said yes. "My beautiful family, this is why I share these stories with you. Because love is not a feeling that happens to us. Love is a choice we make every single day. It's choosing presence over productivity. It's choosing vulnerability over protection. It's choosing to show up, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's difficult, even when it requires us to change everything about how we've been living." Alexander Thorne thought he was building an empire, but what he was really doing was building walls. Walls that kept him safe from intimacy, from vulnerability, from the beautiful terror of loving someone more than you love your own success. It took losing everything that mattered for him to realize that true wealth isn't measured in dollars or deals or achievements. True wealth is measured in the depth of our connections, the quality of our presence, the love we create and sustain with the people who matter most. If this story has touched your heart, if it's made you think about your own relationships, your own priorities, your own choices between success and love, then I need you to do 3 things for me. First, like this video. Let me know that stories like this matter to you, that you want more content that challenges you to live better, love deeper, choose more wisely. Second, share this story with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's struggling to balance ambition with love. Someone who's forgotten that presence is the greatest present we can give the people we care about. Someone who needs to be reminded that it's never too late to choose differently. Third, subscribe to Cedar Light Love Stories and hit that notification bell. Because we're building something special here. A community of people who believe in the transformative power of love, who understand that the best stories aren't just entertainment, they're roadmaps for living better lives. Tell me in the comments, what would you choose? If you had to pick between professional success and personal love, what would matter more to you? Have you ever had to rebuild trust with someone you hurt? Have you ever been given a second chance that changed your life? Your stories matter to me. Your experiences inspire the content I create. Your willingness to share your heart helps other people feel less alone in their struggles. And remember, my beautiful family, love is not a luxury for people who have time for it. Love is the reason we work. The reason we strive, the reason we build anything at all. Everything else, every achievement, every success, every empire, it all means nothing if we have no one to share it with. Choose love. Choose presence. Choose the people who matter most. Because at the end of your life, no one remembers your net worth, but everyone remembers how you made them feel. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. Thank you for believing in the power of love to transform lives. Thank you for being the beautiful, loving, inspiring family that makes every story worth telling. Until next time, keep choosing love. Keep showing up. Keep believing that the best is yet to come. This is Cedar Light Love Stories, where every ending is really just a beautiful beginning.